In this video, we're going to consider what happens when both the supply and demand curves shift at the same time. There are four possibilities. Demand and supply both increase, demand and supply both decrease, demand increases and supply decreases, and finally demand decreases and supply increases. An increase refers to a rightward shift in the curve. A decrease refers to a leftward shift in the curve. For each possibility listed above, we cannot predict what will happen to both the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. We will only be able to predict what will happen with one of the variables, either the price or quantity, not both. So in some of these examples, we might determine that, hey, the equilibrium price will be higher. As for the equilibrium quantity, we don't know. It could go up, could go down, could stay the same, depending on the magnitudes of the shifts. So let's go through each one of these possibilities. The first possibility is demand and supply both increase. This is the method I like to use to try to figure out what is going to happen to equilibrium. We'll start with one effect at a time. An increase in demand, and assuming you're comfortable with an increase in demand, the demand curve shifts right. That will cause the equilibrium price to rise and the equilibrium quantity to rise. Now let's consider the increase in supply. So again, assuming you're familiar with just shifting one of the curves, an increase in supply is a rightward shift in the supply curve. This causes the equilibrium price to decrease, but the equilibrium quantity to increase. So to take both of these effects together, what we're doing is we're looking for things that are in common. An increase in price and decrease in price, well, that is not going in the same direction. So we're not going to be able to predict what is going to happen to the price. As for the quantity, both of these effects lead in the same direction, so we can say unequivocally that the equilibrium quantity will be higher. So to sum up, the effect on the equilibrium price is uncertain. The increase in demand causes price to rise, but the increase in supply causes price to fall. We don't know which effect is going to dominate. So in that case, the effect on the equilibrium price is uncertain. However, for the quantity, we can be 100% certain that the equilibrium quantity will increase if both demand and supply increase. Let's move on to our second example. Here, demand and supply both decrease. Both curves shift to the left. A falling demand curve means that the equilibrium price and quantity will be lower. A falling supply curve, a decrease in supply, will lead to a higher price but a lower quantity. So what do these effects have in common? The price effects are going in opposite directions, so we don't know what's going to happen to the price, but for the quantity, we can predict that the equilibrium quantity will be lower. So in this case, the effect on the equilibrium price is uncertain. Could go up, could go down, could stay the same, depending on which curve shifts by the greatest distance. But as for the equilibrium quantity, it definitely decreases. Example 3. Demand shifts right and supply shifts left. An increase in demand, as we saw earlier, leads to a higher equilibrium price and quantity. A decrease in supply, as we just showed, leads to a leftward shift in supply curve, so a higher equilibrium price but lower equilibrium quantity. What do these two effects taken together have in common? The higher price. So in this particular case, we can only say something meaningful about the price. The equilibrium price increases, but as for the quantity, we don't know. Could go up, could go down, could stay the same. So the effect on the equilibrium quantity is uncertain. And in our last example, demand decreases and supply increases. A decrease in demand means a decrease in the equilibrium price and a decrease in the equilibrium quantity. When supply increases, that will decrease the equilibrium price, but it will increase the equilibrium quantity. Looking for things that are in common, decrease in price, decrease in price. So we can say that the overall effect here, the equilibrium price will be lower, but as for the quantity, the two effects on the quantity are going in opposite directions, so we don't know. Okay, I hope you found this video helpful.